Content and trigger warning. If any of the things shown on screen have the potential to upset you, it's best that you click away from the video now. Additionally, this video contains spoilers for every release of Persona 3. Persona 3 Reload is out. You don't need me to tell you that it's good. This game rules, man. I would go as far to say that it's the best Persona game so far. This release was super exciting for me personally, as it was the first mainline entry in the series to release since I got into Persona a few years ago. That was right after the Royal release, so I had to wait quite a while. I adore Persona, man. It's one of those few rare franchises that make me feel like it was tailor-made specifically for me. I've been wanting to make a video regarding Persona since I started making videos, but I could never come up with anything that had either already been done or could have been done much better by someone other than myself. If I was going to make anything, it was probably going to be another video about me gushing about how much I love a specific character, but as much as I love Seize, the investigation team, and the Phantom Thieves, none of them quite had the allure that I was looking for. But then I played Reload, and met Shinjiro again, and I had realized that I kind of forgot about him. Probably because of, story stuff, but as he kept popping up, I got to relive the experience of falling in love with this character again. This is kind of a weird thing to say, but I kind of felt terrible that I had somehow managed to forget about how much I like this character. So that's why I'm here. This video will serve as a record as of why Shinjiro Aragaki is my favorite Persona character. Okay, I think that everyone that has bothered to even click on this probably already knows who Shinji is, but regardless, let's spread out some basic information. Shinjiro Aragaki is a playable character in Persona 3. He was one of the founding members of the specialized extracurricular execution squad who left the group prior to the events of Persona 3, but later rejoins as one of the last new party members introduced in the game. Shinji is 17 years old, but turns 18 during the month of August. He represents the Moon Arcana, and his persona is Castor. More on that later. Shinji's first appearances in the actual game paint him in a very ominous and mysterious light. The first time you get to see him is in Akihiko's hospital room. He has a whole 5 lines of dialogue in this scene, but even so manages to thoroughly freak out Junpei. We make proper acquaintance with Shinji on the 6th of June. During Yukari, Junpei, and Makoto's search for information on Fuka, they investigate the back alleys of Port Island Station, where they're harassed and threatened by street thugs. Shinji steps in when things start to get hairy and humiliates the guy that sucker punched Junpei. And I guess I didn't remember this plot point, but it's actually one of these street punks that first names Shinji to the player. Kind of odd, but I guess he does properly introduce himself later. From here until Shinjiro actually joins, we're fed information about him in crumbs. Mostly it's just Akihiko bugging him around Iwatodai's station. We learn that the two of them have known each other since they were kids and had a very close friendship at one time, but Shinjiro is clearly withdrawn a bit for reasons that we won't know for a while. We also learn that Shinjiro was a member of Seize at one point, but despite Akihiko's constant probing, he is very against rejoining. After the introduction of Strago, we learn that Shinji is acting as a sort of reluctant information broker for them in exchange for some kind of medication. We're going to talk more about this later, but Shinji takes this medication to subdue his persona so that it doesn't try to kill him. It's actually these pills that cause Shinji to dress the way that he does, by the way. The medication leaves him unable to regulate his body temperature, so he has to dress warmly. This cycle of Akihiko asking Shinjiro to rejoin Seize and him refusing repeats until September 2nd, when he is no longer given a choice. This is a side tangent, but I really like the version of this scene that's in FES. Something about the way that Liam O'Brien delivers the line,
"The situation has changed. Sorry, but this time I'm not asking."
I think about that line a couple times a week, and I have no idea why. They changed it in Reload.
Things have changed. Sorry, but I'm not taking no for an answer this time.
And honestly, I'm a little upset about it. It's fine, there's probably a whole one person that's upset by that change, and it's me, so whatever. Anyway, yay, Shinjiro joins Seize for the 2nd time, and it's awesome. I don't want to dwell too much on what he does in battle, because I could sit here and tell you that he starts with Fatal End, which does medium slash damage to one foe with a low chance of inflicting fear, but honestly, who cares? All you really need to know is that Shinjiro is absolutely the MVP of the team when you have him. He drops tactical nukes on shadows and looks damn good doing it. Speaking of which, Persona 3 Reload gave Seize proper uniforms in the way of the battle gear that is made for them. It never bugged me that Seize fought demons in the same clothes they go to geometry class in, but I can understand that bothering some people. To be fair, everybody looks cool with their anti-shadow gear, but Shinji looks outstanding. I need to talk about the axe. This thing's as tall as Yukari is, and Shinji just one-hands it like it doesn't weigh anything. I'd also like to comment on his theurgy, Bleeding Fury.
I'm ready. This is it. See you in hell.
Okay. It's a tad edgy. Hi, I'm editing this right now, and I realize that the joke that I made here was actually kind of insensitive, so instead I'm going to put in this recording of me saying that Bleeding Fury is a very cool. Alright, thanks. Now that Shinji's on the team, we can talk about the new content added in Reload. Persona 3 Original doesn't have social links for the male members of SEES, which has always kinda sucked compared to 4 and 5, but they did add these sort of faux social link hangouts with every member of SEES, so we get content sort of akin to a social link without any of the actual Velvet Room benefits. Shinji's faux link is mainly concerned with his relationship with Akihiko, Mitsuru, and Gekkoukan High. I think I forgot to mention this part until now, but Shinji is technically a student at Gekkoukan High, but he doesn't attend class or is on temporary leave or something. I don't know, it's not really important. Mitsuru wants Shinji to come back to school, so she gets Makoto to deliver a reinstatement form to him. Once you deliver it to him, Shinji remains firm on his decision to stay absent from school, but is reluctantly happy about your concern for him and treats you to ramen the next time you hang out with him. After this, Shinjiro is confronted by Mitsuru outside of the dorm. This scene is kinda rough because we know that these two used to be companions, but it's clear now that their relationship is very strained. I feel that Mitsuru and Shinji are two very different people who in this instance want very different things, and Mitsuru has a hard time trying to understand what Shinji's motives are.
I got the paperwork, but I don't remember saying anything about turning it in. What's the point anyhow? I got no business there.
Then why did you come back here?
In the next event, Shinji asks Makoto to deliver an extended leave of absence form to the school. Once the form is delivered to Mitsuru, she opens up about the SEES of the past, during the time when it was just comprised of Shinji, Akihiko, and herself. She also talks about why she cares so much about Shinji's lack of attendance, being that sometime after SEES was first founded, the three of them all made a promise to graduate together. When you ask him about this next time you hang out, his answer doesn't change, but he clearly feels guilty about it. He explains that he isn't going to live much longer, and that it wouldn't matter if he started attending class again. He's just focused on setting things straight with the little time that he has left. More on that later. Makoto hands the reinstatement form back to him, and unfortunately, we all know what happens next. Let's talk about Shinji's relationship with Ken Amada. 2 years prior to the events of Persona 3, Ken's mom was killed in a freak Persona-related accident when Shinji lost control of Castor and crushed her underneath a pile of rubble. A 9-year-old Ken watched in horror as this happened, and ever since has been searching for the strange creature that caused it, that being Castor, and by proxy, Shinji. It was this event that sent Shinji spiraling down into a guilt-ridden depression, and sent Ken down a path of revenge and resentment. It's never really explained how, but somehow Shinji learned the identity of Ken and his mom. And it was in learning that Ken was going to be joining SEES that made Shinji rejoin the team. Shinji's goal in his rejoining was to keep an eye on Ken and steer him towards a path that wouldn't end with him being as miserable as he is. This all comes to a head on October 4th, the 2nd year anniversary of the death of Ken's mom. Ken asks Shinjiro to meet him behind the alley of Port Island Station and swears that he will kill him to avenge his mom. Shinji is willing to let this happen, but he warns Ken that if he does go through with this, he'll end up just like him. Then Takaya shows up and reveals to Shinji that Ken was planning on killing himself after the deed was done. Shinji is infuriated by this revelation, but before he has a chance to think, Takaya shoots him in the chest. Takaya demands that Shinji tell him who SEES' navigator is, but Shinji still chooses to protect them by saying that they don't have one. But then, Ken steps up and lies to Takaya, saying that he's the navigator. I think in this moment, Shinji realizes that Ken is stepping into the point of no return. Ken has lost the will to live, and Shinji has failed at what he has lived up to this point to do. So when Takaya prepares to shoot Ken, he does the only thing he can do, and takes the bullet for him. The rest of SEES show up to watch Shinji's last words to Ken, that he should live for himself, and that this is how it should be. I've played through this game at least 5 times at this point, but Shinji's death always hurts. In Reload, after his death, and if you've done all of the faux link events up to this point, you're able to go into Shinji's room at the dorm, which is pretty barren. But on the desk, you'll find the school reinstatement form that Mitsuru had given him much earlier, but now with his signature at the bottom. Mitsuru will come into the room and see it, and is touched to learn that a part of him still cared about the promise that they had made. Alright, with all the story stuff out of the way, let's get into the fun part of the video. The part where I talk about all the stuff that there is to like about Shinji. First thing I'd like to talk about is another new addition in Reload, Cooking with Shinji. A slightly unexpected side of Shinjiro is his excellent cooking ability, making him pretty much the only resident of Iwatodai dorm that can cook anything edible. Sidebar, in Reload, Shinji's cooking ability is actually hinted at super early on in the game when Mitsuru gives the initial members a tour of the dorm.
Do you all cook your own meals?
I've seen Akihiko in here from time to time. As for myself, I can't say I do. We used to have someone who cooked with some frequency, but...
Nice touch. Shinjiro does not fuck around when it comes to cooking, and is very serious with Makoto as he helps out and teaches him how to make katsudon and shrimp tempura. He also explains how he came to become such a talented cook, by working at a restaurant as a teenager and being taught by its strict manager. Nice bit of Shinji lore that wasn't in the original game. What was in the original game was Shinjiro's fondness towards Koromaru. Shinji goes out of his way to prepare home-cooked meals for Koromaru, which he of course deserves, but probably isn't necessary. He's a dog. He'll eat anything. But Koromaru is very grateful to receive these meals and will occasionally talk about it during the Dark Hour, courtesy of Aiga's translation. Of course, there's that infamous scene from the camera feed at Iwatodai dorm where Shinjiro doesn't want to be caught watching a cooking show with Koromaru and pretends to be asleep when Aigas and Fuka return. But Koromaru snitches on him and then tells him that he isn't really asleep. But he isn't mad at him. How could you be? While we're on the topic of Shinji's relationships with other characters, I want to talk about one relationship that I've never heard anybody speak about, Shinji's relationship with Fuka. You'd be forgiven for thinking that these two don't really have much of a relationship outside of, living in the same building, but I've noticed that there's a weird link between these two. Consider that the first time we meet Shinji in the game is when we're delivering Fuka's class roster to Akihiko, or that Shinji is the one that saves you from being shanked by street thugs when you're out searching for information about Fuka's disappearance. Shinjiro and Fuka are also the only two characters who cook as part of their canon story, even before Reload, where apparently everybody in Seas cooks all the time. And finally, on October 4th, who is Shinji protecting by not revealing the name of the Navigator? You could say that he's protecting Seas as a whole, but really he's protecting Fuka. It's strange, isn't it? These are two characters who I'm not sure even speak to each other during the events of the game, but when one is mentioned, it seems that the other isn't far behind. I don't know, just something to think about. One element of the character that I am admittedly not as invested in as the others is Shinji's relationship with Akihiko. As previously mentioned, these two have known each other since childhood, both being orphans in the same orphanage. And they're sort of played as non-blood brothers. In fact, their relationship is reflected in their personas, Polydeuces and Castor. Polydeuces and Castor are figures deriving from Greek mythology. They are half-brothers, both having the same mother, Leda. While Polydeuces was born of Zeus, the king of the gods, and therefore rendered immortal, Castor was born of a mortal, Tyndareus, the Spartan king, and as a result was mortal himself. The two of them being related is why the persona versions of the two look so similar. Now, at some point, Castor was killed in an ambush by Idas of Messene. Polydeuces, not wanting to be separated from his brothers, shared his immortality with Castor, and the two of them became the Gemini constellation. That's where the whole Gemini and twins things come from. Let's talk about Shinjiro's voice actors. Before Reload, Shinjiro was voiced by Grant George, who I hadn't heard of prior to Persona, but he's very well known in the realm of acting in general, not just voice acting. In fact, you've more than likely heard him before. He's been in Fire Emblem, Naruto, Disgaea, Final Fantasy, Bleach, Kill la Kill, One Punch Man, Mob Psycho, Pokemon. Jesus, he's done a lot of stuff. Those are just the big ones that I recognize. He's been in plenty of other stuff. His Shinjiro, it's okay.
They didn't know what they were getting into. I'll make sure they leave. All right? Did Aki tell you to come here? Stupid move. What do you want to know? About that ghost story?
It's got a certain nasally quality to it that is extremely prominent and a little distracting. Let's not act like the original Persona 3 was a masterclass in voice direction, just look at Fuka. Atlus was a much smaller company at the time, and English dubs of Japanese media just weren't really there yet. Hell, I still don't think we've quite perfected it as an industry. Grant George is clearly a very talented voice actor, but his Shinjiro was just sort of a product of the time. In Reload, Shinjiro got a new VA in the way of Justice Slocum. This man's name is Justice, and I think that's fantastic. Justice's Shinjiro is excellent. It's the definitive voice of the character moving forward.
They didn't know what they were getting into. I'll make sure they leave. You good with that? I remember you. You guys were in Aki's room at the hospital. You idiots. Go home. You don't belong here.
He's very deep, which complements the intimidation factor that Shinjiro has very well. My only real criticism with Justice's Shinji is that I don't think he's very accustomed to swearing. I get the impression that Justice isn't the type to curse in real life because it just doesn't seem to come very naturally to him.
I don't have time for this shit. You're really starting to piss me off. You've never been good at hiding shit.
It's also very possible that this is just a me thing and everybody else thinks that he's just fine at swearing, and I do hope that's the case, but I don't know. Regardless, Mr. Slocum has absolutely killed his role as Shinjiro, and I look forward to hopefully seeing him in more stuff in the future. Whenever I get into one of these spirals of adoration for any character, I can never just sit with it and enjoy it. I always want to psychoanalyze myself and figure out what it is about me multiplied by what it is about this character that makes me fawn over them. But with Shinjiro, I'm really still not sure what exactly about him elicits such a strong reaction from me. Shinji is one of the rare few characters that can manage to make me happy just by him existing on the screen in front of me, and I still don't have an explanation as to why exactly that is. I have a million small things that I love about Shinjiro, but I don't have that one nugget of information that definitely solves this conundrum for me, but I do have some theories, whether or not they hold any water. I've never really understood the term comfort character before. It's a term thrown around a ton by other people of various flavors of neurodivergent, but I can't say that I've ever really related to it myself. However, with Shinji, I feel like I sort of get what they mean. I feel a level of contentment and security with Shinji that I don't with any other character. I still don't know why, maybe it's because he's a very predictable character. Shinji is a character of a very common archetype, and one that I don't hold any specific feelings towards. The tough exterior, soft interior male is all over the place, and aside from Shinji, I can only think of one other character of this type that I actually like. But it feels safe, mostly because it's easy to understand, so maybe that's why. The second theory is the most simple. Maybe I like Shinjiro because he reminds me of my dad. I don't want to say much more than that at the risk of giving out any more personal information than necessary, but I will say that the main difference between Shinjiro and my father is that one of them is a fantastic cook and the other is my father. I don't really know how to end this video, but I guess, in conclusion, Shinjiro Aragaki is a very sweet and special man. He's a character that has enriched the lives of myself and many, many others. Just look at the numerous Twitter accounts that post about him pretty much hourly. I think it's fantastic how popular he's gotten with new and old fans, considering that this is a character that you can really only explore within one in-game month. He probably has, an hour and a half of screen time? But he's able to make such an impact within that time to make people just obsess over him. Bravo. If you still haven't played Persona 3 Reload before watching to this point, this is your last chance because I'm about to talk about the final boss. I hadn't played Persona 3 in a while before Reload came out because I wanted to be as fresh as possible for it. And I forgot about Shinjiro's little cameo during the Nyx fight. Media doesn't make me cry that often. In fact, I can only recall one time recently that it did happen, and that was a book about Hachiko and doesn't count. But just everything combined, being about to complete a game that was so good I went into a mini depression after finishing it, the beautiful new visuals and the music and everybody calling out for Makoto when this happened.
All right, let's do this.
I didn't cry, but I was really close. Thank you for watching.